Hello, planty people. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Darylyn, and today I have had a topic buzzing around in my head for a couple of weeks now, and I think today's the day to talk about it. Why? Because we've just been blessed this morning with a new rare plant index from the one and only Kaylee Ellen. Now, I know that lots of people have different opinions about her. That is fine, but just from an objective point of view, I enjoy the rare plant index series. And it got me thinking this morning because the whole concept of rare in the houseplant collecting community is really interesting and really ever changing. And that series has been kind of an interesting window into watching how this conception evolved over the past couple of years, because the idea of what is rare, what makes a plant rare, has really kind of changed and evolved over the past couple of years as the hobby has expanded because of the rise and the prevalence of the houseplant community's activity on the internet. It's just a totally different world than it was back in the early days of the Rare Plant Index series. And this has just really got me thinking because, let's just start out though and put how the availability of plants changes over time, like completely aside. It's a completely different topic. I don't have enough time to cover it today, and I have to take Ralphie to the vet at 4:20. And I don't have time to get into that today. But this concept of rare and what makes a plant rare has been debated hotly amongst houseplant collectors quite consistently as long as I've been into, quote unquote, rare plants. So I kind of want to just ramble off some thoughts that I've had about it. I think they're interesting, and I would definitely be interested to see what everyone else kind of thinks about it, because like it or not, the concept and perception of rarity of any plant is going to affect how much you're going to pay for it. And also, honestly, subconsciously, I do think that this concept of rarity informs whether or not we find a plant to be desirable or not. Interesting thing to dive into today. And just to give us a little bit of a baseline, I kind of just want to double check what the dictionary definition of rare is. And what I found was actually really interesting. There's 3 definitions that the Oxford dictionary that pops up on Google provided. And the word rare pertaining to a situation is simply not occurring often. Referring to a thing, and this is actually one I found most interesting, is that when referring to a rare thing or object, the dictionary defines rare as not found in large numbers and subsequently of interest or value because it's not found in large numbers. So that is really interesting to me because right there, molded into the definition in the dictionary, it's already addressing the value of something. Interesting. So the last component of the dictionary definition of rare is referring to the condition of something, which is unusually good or remarkable. So that is also interesting because that really plays into the quality of plants, particularly variegated plants. So I find it's extremely interesting that even though we debate what does rare even mean anymore, and it feels like it lost its meaning because it has taken on a very loaded kind of marketing sales kind of tactic in the plant community. I mean, even the dictionary definition of the word rare does track very well with how the term is and can be applied to plants. So I think the first thing that I want to address as far as what does it even mean when we say rare houseplants is I really tend to think of how rare a houseplant is by how easy is it for me to find the plant and basically have it, tomorrow or within the next couple of days. And back before the internet houseplant community really exploded, that was mostly limited to what can you find in big box stores. And then there were some more rarer plant shops, around and about, but it really varied depending on the region you lived in. I remember I used to see specifically with Hoyas, when I would look for Hoyas, there would be information about like regions in the country where it was more common to find certain Hoyas in big box stores. And I thought that was extremely interesting. I would say that the selection of, more premium plants of interest has definitely gotten better in big box stores. And you can definitely walk into your local like nursery, a larger nursery, or even places like Home Depot and Lowe's, depending on the right time of season, and find things, consistently that you would have never just been able to find out of nowhere, like, back in the day. So I think it's cool and it's interesting that these things are becoming more accessible. But at the same time, if you're going off of what you can find, just walking into, whatever plant sellers physically are around you, it's kind of misleading because like we all know that there are a lot of plants that you're never probably going to find in a big box store or at a nursery, and that you're going to have a hard time finding consistently even at specialty plant shops that are not rare. Like you can type them into Google and find something for sale and literally have it to your house within a couple of days at any point in time. There's lots of plants like that. And, if we're going by that idea of what's available in, sellers in your location, basically everything in my house would be considered very rare. Maybe with the exception of like the pink princess, the Cebu blue, you can kind of find it at places like Walmart. But most of the stuff that I have in my house would be considered quite rare if you're going off of what you can find locally available at like physical locations. So if you're not able to find a plant in your local nurseries and plant shops, most people, where's the next place that they're going to look for it? Probably Google. That's going to probably bring up places like Etsy, and then maybe some online nurseries like Logi's, Steve's Leaves. There's a number of other ones that are larger that have their own independent websites that don't sell on Etsy. You're going to look there, and that is going to open up a lot more plants to the tip of your fingers. Personally, if you can type in the name of a plant and listings come up in abundance, and you can essentially have that plant in your hands within a week or so, depending on how shipping works, I don't think that those plants are really rare. I mean, and maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but like what really they are is premium. And just because a plant isn't rare doesn't mean that it still shouldn't cost a lot of money compared to what you find at a big box store, because even if there's lots of specimens around, the process of cultivating them, propagating them, growing them out, high quality specimens, pest control, all of that stuff that goes into growing and producing a high quality plant. I mean, it's a lot of work. So I'm not saying that the prices that any of these sellers are asking for are not worth it, or that they're not maybe a little bit overpriced. I haven't done the market research, so I'm not in a position to like say that right now. If you're interested in seeing that in the future, maybe like leave a comment and I'll maybe do a deeper dive into like the plant market and like how things are priced. But my personal opinion is that if you can type in the name of a plant into Google and find something for sale immediately, that plant's probably not rare. There's a lot of plants that you can do that with. There are also a lot of plants that you can't do that with that really also aren't rare if you know where to look. And knowing where to look is where this huge online plant community has started to come in, because I would say that there are plants that are almost impossible to find if you're just looking at online nursery restocks, Etsy and whatnot, because they sell out so fast because they're very popular. Like Philodendron gloriosum was a good example for a long time. They were really hard to find anywhere. However, if you're in the plant community, online, and you are in the right groups, you follow the right Instagram accounts, you follow the right blogs, you're on the right mailing lists, these plants are not hard to find. I guess the caveat there, and this brings me back to the dictionary definition of having interest or value because they're not found in large numbers. If you can find multiple listings for a plant in the online plant community at the tip of your fingers, but the only limiting factor of you not being able to procure it immediately is that you're priced out of it, is it rare? I don't know. Like, that's something that is very interesting to think about, is that are some plants actually not as rare as we maybe think they are because just lots of people don't know where to look? I talked about this actually in my Is Philodendron Melanochrysum Canceled video, because that plant I feel like was kind of the poster child of like a rare plant, especially back in like 2019. People were going crazy for them. And I thought it was so cool that I had this rare plant in my house. But once I started to get deeper into the online plant community and like started running in circles with other plant collectors, I started to discover that like everybody had those. And so is it going to be hard to find a Philodendron Melanochrysum if you walk into a big box store? Absolutely. You're not going to find that in like 99% of big box stores, local nurseries, even specialty plant shops. They may not always have those in stock, but like if you want a Philodendron Melanochrysum, you can easily find it, click of a button, searching on the internet, and you could probably find like an even better variety if you know which local groups to look in. So what does that kind of mean as far as rarity goes? I mean, if it wasn't for the internet, all of these plants would still be extremely hard to find. But because we're so connected now these days, it's easier than ever to find something, you know, premium or rare that previously would have just been, you know, extremely cool to see in botanical gardens. It's kind of mind-blowing how fast the landscape has changed in a couple of years. And I guess that kind of brings us to the last like component of that dictionary definition, which is unusually good or remarkable, because this is actually specifically relevant to variegated plants, which was, you know, the topic of the Rare Plant Index that kind of inspired this little, you know, like rambling thought from me, because you see lots and lots of variegated plants for sale, specifically Monstera albo, Philodendron Pink Princess, even strawberry shakes. Like I'm starting to see a lot more listings for them, especially if you know where to look. But what I don't see very often is really spectacular specimens, like ones that are not only just like really nicely variegated, but also established enough and stable enough that if you pay the money, the risk of not actually getting what you're paying for or you think you're paying for is like basically zero. Those kinds of specimens are extremely rare, and you're still gonna pay a lot of money for them. The typical listing that I see for a pink princess is something that's reverted, and I mean you can get a 1 or 2 leaf cutting of a pink princess that's like mostly reverted for, I mean, if you know where to look, like you can get one for like $50, maybe even less than that if it's small. But if you are trying to find like a really spectacularly well marbled plant that's a little bit larger, with very consistent variegation of the form of the plant, where it fades down to black after the leaves come out and it doesn't get to be that nasty brown dishwater color, you're still gonna pay a lot for that. Like I don't see those specimens for sale very often at all. And the same is true with strawberry shakes. I see a lot of like really like iffy, like very small strawberry shakes for sale. I don't see a ton of really like solid, spectacular, low risk strawberry shakes for sale. And when I do see them, they're still extremely expensive. I think it's interesting too, though, because I do believe that those low quality specimens that it like kind of saturate the market do drag the price on the really amazing specimens down, unjustifiably so, because they really are extremely hard to find when they're in like amazing condition. So the other thing too, I guess my like final thought on this matter is that if you really, really know where to look, plants that are even considered unicorns come up for sale on the daily. And really the only limiting factor as to whether or not you can procure them or not is whether or not you can afford to pay the price that they're asking. You know, if you know where to look, like I see, I'm not giving away all my secrets, but I will like cop to the fact that I see specimens of Philodendron ilsamanii for sale almost every day. I see specimens of Philodendron whippleway for sale almost every day. And understandably so, like most people, I am not in a position to fork out that kind of cash for those plants right now. But the thing is that it kind of makes me wonder, are these plants as rare as people think they are? because once you know where to look and once a lot of these listings start to be centralized, it's like these are everywhere, like everywhere. So I guess the takeaway from this is that rare is a really hard term to quantify when you're talking about plants, because not everyone has access to all points in the market equally. Not every specimen is created equally. Just don't ever pay more for a plant than you're really comfortable with, because it just, for a lot of reasons, you may not be buying what you think you're buying. Because I know when a lot of people buy rare plants, what they're thinking is like, yes, they're getting the plant, but they're also getting maybe like a little bit of, you know, like a prestige if they have this plant that, you know, is coveted and sought after. And maybe they have an investment where they'll be able to eventually propagate and sell, you know, cuttings of the plant, make a little bit of money. You know, maybe they just intrinsically like really love the plant, and that's fine. And if you're willing to pay the price for it, then that's, hey, more power to you, you know, like life is short, make yourself happy. But like, I would just really discourage people from forking out like an amount of money that you feel is a lot for you without doing a lot of digging, because you may find that there's a lot of specimens available. Maybe they're much higher quality than you're finding, you know, in kind of the mainstream plant sources, that the prices aren't as stable as you may think. So that's just kind of my musings on the subject. Please don't send any like hate to Kaylee Ellen. Her video on rare variegated plants was really interesting. I don't think she has any kind of agenda with, you know, these are just my personal thoughts, my personal opinion. So that is kind of just what I'm thinking. It's interesting. I'm interested to see where things continue to go. If you are wondering what I mean by like knowing the right places to look, again, I would recommend looking for the groups on Facebook, looking for accounts on Instagram to follow, getting on mailing lists of, you know, certain nurseries, you know, Logie's, Steve's Leaves I mentioned, Gabriella Plants is another one, NSE Tropicals is another one. Like NSE Tropicals is like very prestigious. Tazula Plants is another one. They really specialize in absolutely spectacular anthurium. So yeah, I guess I'm going to leave it there. Food for thought. But if you have any thoughts to add, drop your opinion below in the comments. Let's discuss. Let's keep it, you know, keep it classy, keep it civil. I really hope I haven't just kicked the hornet's nest with this, because like it's literally just supposed to be like, oh, this is an interesting idea to think about. So I guess I will see you in my next one. Hope everyone's having a great holiday season so far. Bye.